Good morning and welcome to Line by Line Bible Studies. My name is Paul Strangini. We had left off in the verse in Matthew where he refers to the first time in Matthew to, I believe, I think John the Baptist, at least in other Gospels, refers to them as serpents, you offspring of vipers. And I spent the last part of the study yesterday talking about how that, I deny that this is any sort of literal, that this should not be interpreted literally. Like they literally are his flesh and blood offspring. And that has to do with what we're about to read in chapter 13. Because in the parable of the tares, the Lord Jesus, the tares are gathered together and burned. And if the tares are identified as the flesh and blood offspring of Satan walking on the earth for some reason, then can't be changed. You know what I mean? You can't change that. And that means what it would be saying is that only Satan's children are going to die. And to me, that's not right at all. For one, it takes any burden of responsibility from any other group of people. If they were evil because they were Satan's children, then what's your excuse? You know what I mean? Doesn't that make you on some level worse? You're not even a child of the devil, but you're doing things that the children of the devil do. Oh, I'm not as bad as them. You're holier than thou. That's what holier than thou is. It's saying what I do is not as bad as what they do. Instead of saying there's one holy but God. Only God is holy. The rest of us are sinners. And as believers, we are striving towards perfection as God has called us. We're striving towards not being children of the devil. There's, there are different terms that are used even. Like in Matthew, Jesus says, whoever you yield your members servants to obey, or whoever you yield your members to obey, that's whose servant you are. Whether obedience unto righteousness unto God, then you are God's servant. Whether sin unto wickedness, in serving the purposes of the enemy, Satan. So, the idea that being genetically connected to Satan is what makes people evil is preposterous. What made Adam sin? And they said, well, it's not sin. It's like being especially wicked, being murderers. Once you start thinking that only they are capable of murder, only the children of the devil are capable of really bad sins, you are treading on dangerous ground. If you're not aware of the monster that you could be, you're a danger to yourself and everyone around you. You have to confront your own nature. The way, if you don't understand how that circumstance could corrupt you and turn you into something monstrous. You know what I mean? There's nothing more I don't know, more what? I would start off with those comparisons. It is unseemly for someone, people who think they can do, that they are not capable of evil on any level. A lot of times it's it might have to do with just their power. They don't have the power to do it. There's things restraining them. There's society, but people are willing, under the right circumstances, we are all willing to do things. I could just sit down with you and start saying like, well, what if someone was threatening this or that? And they say like, well, that wouldn't be evil. That would be this. But what about saving your own life? And some people are quite good, okay, relatively. But I don't know. Is there anyone on the earth who is not capable of some great evil? I guess because I know I am. Let me not accuse others so much as just declare on my own part. It's like, I know what I'm capable of. Oftentimes I feel like I'm not, I couldn't do that. I could never do something. But under the right circumstances, it's possible that I would. Why not? I mean, just because I want to believe that I wouldn't do certain things. I want to believe I would do right under certain circumstances, and maybe that is what would happen. But until I've actually been in those circumstances, how can I truly say how I'd react? Oh, I'd never do that. But I'm getting off on a track there that is not really helpful to understanding this. But I object to it on many levels because, and speaking of the serpent seed, because it is a spiritual seed. Like I said, I mentioned this last time. I mentioned in this study, I did a 2-hour study on the serpent seed. Yes, generation means offspring, but it's referring to a spiritual offspring. Just as we are the offspring of God, spiritually. 1 John chapter 3 says we are, he that is born of God, that's God's offspring, cannot sin, for his seed remains in him. He actually said, he that is born of God doth not commit sin, for his seed, God's seed, remains in him, and he cannot sin. And he's saying this is here is the distinction between the children of God and the children of Satan. It's the sin. And when I say you can't, you need to recognize the monster that you're capable of being. And I mean without the Lord. Without the Lord, I could not be as good as I am. And a lot of times atheists and people like that will dispute it, that they're really good people. It's like, well, you can say that. You live in a society where all these things are restrained, but what would you be like if everyone else wasn't playing by those rules? I mean, can you be a righteous man in the midst of so much evil? And you haven't proven that. You're just making a claim about yourself that, like, I want to give you the benefit of the doubt. I don't want to accuse you. But I can say this for my part, that I know I'm not a good person at the very core. I mean, some people will say, yeah, Paul, it doesn't make sense. Because you've never been a big, bad person. And that's true. Like, but I know that some of the good I've done in my life was because, as far as the things I refrained from doing evil, was not because I had this sense of moral uprightness. It was because of the restraining factors around me. External things that prevented me from, that made it like a bad decision. It was more out of fear of maybe getting caught of the consequences that I did not do the bad thing. And that's not particularly virtuous. You know what I mean? Just because you fearfully do not do the bad thing, that's not a high level of virtue. That means under the right circumstances, you would gladly do the wrong thing. And now that I'm already kind of talking about the next verse in that. And let's see. Generation of vipers, how can you, being evil, speak good things? I'm going to beat to death the point I was making about the evil we have in us. But like I said, I have a study on my website, oraclesofgod.org, that I should probably link the study directly in the description. But if you go to oraclesofgod.org, the studies page, it's like study number 4, or what is it, 3 or something like that. Let's see. I have it right here in front of me. It's number 3. If you go to studies page, left-hand column, scroll down to number 3, you have the seed of the serpent. And I go from Genesis 3 all the way through all the pertinent scriptures, demonstrating that not only is it a better interpretation to say that it is a spiritual seed, it is a spiritual offspring, it is not just better, it is required. To interpret it literally is irresponsible and childish, quite frankly. Again, it's a sort of a fundamentalist attitude, like this should all be taken. We're going to take it literally. So when it says they were his offspring, that's never done metaphorically. We're just going to take that literally, and then wipe out all intelligent thought about the subject. So yes, I believe that they were the children of the devil, but it wasn't because somehow they had crept into the tribe of Judah and taken over. And like I was saying yesterday, the Jews are not like they are not smarter because, and they do not perform better in a lot of high competency fields because they are the children of the devil. That was going on. Like read the book of Daniel. They wrote the Bible. They had some high-level intellect operating among them since ancient times. Look at Jacob. He was so clever. You know? So yeah, the Jews intellectually are one standard deviation or so. That's just, I'm not, don't quote me that like it's a fact, but there is, yes, that's why they end up in all those high positions, because at the tail end of Bell distribution, if you up in the middle, that means most Jews are the same intelligence as everybody else. It's not like they're all brilliant. There are more Jews than people see Jews at these high levels of accomplishment. I say accomplishment because it's not just positions of power. It's like doctors, scientists, researchers, academics. They're all up there because, yes, they're overrepresented in a lot of fields, but they're all fields that require a high level of competency. It's not just that they're stuck there arbitrarily or because they control everything. They have... The reason the Jews got up there is because they clawed and fought their way to the top of a lot of fields, and they didn't have advantages. Very often they had the exact opposite. It was disadvantages. They were not looked upon favorably in many of the places where they were found. So in a lot of times they're arbitrarily restricted from obtaining high position, and then but wherever it was allowed, they strove and they achieved. I'm generally not a Jew apologist, because it's like I have nothing against them. There's no, I'm not like, I don't think of it as I'm saying I'm making excuses for any perceived. They're us. They're like us. They're the same. They're just people. I mean, they're God's chosen people on that front, but as far as they have the same flaws and virtues that all men and women have. They're not like exceptionally different. They're not exceptionally wicked. A lot of them are exceptionally virtuous. So I get so sick of all that, and it's such a distraction. You've latched onto this beautiful Christianity, and then and you got this delicious punch, and then you bring that in, it's like you just dropped crap right in the punch. It's like you ruined it completely. And when people believe in that doctrine, it just consumes everything. It poisons everything. It makes everything unfit. because it always becomes the first thing. It becomes more important than salvation. It becomes more important than righteousness. Do you know who the Kenites are? And it's really absurd to go down that. That is not the Christianity of the Bible. That is imposing a really freakish version of fundamentalism on the scriptures, because it is a sort of fundamentalist thought. Even though you got to go back to, and when you get to the Old Testament, see what they do in the New Testament, they take this metaphor of children of serpents, right? They take this metaphor and they take it literally. Then they go to the Old Testament and they turn the Garden of Eden into a sort of I can't even call it a metaphor. It's more like innuendo. Like, she ate the fruit of the tree, wink, wink. And then she gave it to Adam, and he ate the fruit of the tree, wink, wink. And then a baby appears, wink, wink. The baby appearing isn't even part of the story. It's like, it's part of the genealogy of Adam. And Adam knew his wife Eve, and she conceived and bare Cain. And Cain knew his wife, and she conceived and bare, etc. Oh, and there's a little parenthesis of some verses. I cover all that in my study. So if you think I'm full of it, I challenge you, go listen to my study on the seed of the serpent and tell me, and then write me and tell me I listened to the whole thing and whatever. Tell me what I did wrong. All right? I'm going to have to talk about that anyway in chapter 13. So in other words, 17 minutes in, we're going to stop talking about that. How can you, being evil, speak good things? For out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaketh. And one of my favorite verses. I love to quote that a lot. A good man out of the good treasure of the heart bringeth forth good things. And an evil man out of the evil treasure of his heart, or treasure, bringeth forth evil things. But I say unto you that every idle word that men shall speak, they shall give account thereof in the day of judgment. For by thy words thou shalt be justified, and by thy words thou shalt be condemned. Okay. Got a lot to think about there. I mean, so much could be said about it. First of all, I wanted to say, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. I quote that a lot in life. Because it's true, is that the things that are on you, that you talk about, is what's going on in your heart. It's, it's not like, and again, he's speaking, like when he says every idle word, men shall speak, they shall give account thereof in the judgment. I don't think that means literally God is going to go over your every single word. But what it means, because, he that is put on Christ is passed from judgment to light. Or life, sorry. Judgment to light. Hopefully to light too. But most of all, what do we believe in Jesus for? That he died for us for the purpose of covering our sins in his blood. And the Old Testament says God would forgive their iniquities and cast them behind them and remove them as far as, oh gosh, what's the analogy that was used? As far as east is from west, as far, cast them into the sea. I will cast them behind me. I will forget about them. So we know that God forgives sin, and at least in a metaphorical sense, forgets about it, which means he won't bring it up. But the thing is, it is accounted for, meaning he has to forgive it. You know what I mean? Or the blood of Jesus has to cover it. Everything has to have been brought into account. The balance has got to be balanced. There has to be something that accounts for every sin. That's why we need the blood of Jesus, because God is not granting eternal life to sinful men You know what I mean? He's sinful men, period. You know, it's not going to be done. And we're all sinners, so we're all out. All of us, everyone. None of us is worthy. Even if you lived a quote-unquote perfect life, as perfect as man could manage. I mean, you never did any great injustice. You never hurt anybody on purpose, you know. But maybe you said, you know, but let's say by, not through malice, you know what I mean? But everyone has small faults, right? And having these small faults, can we in any way say we are worthy of life eternal? We should live. The life I lived is so just necessary that I, of necessity, also must live forever. You know, our continued existence is not something that is necessary. So that thought in anyone's mind that like they've got a limit, like the baseline of judgment is like, well, you ought to live eternally until you prove otherwise, so to speak. Because it's not like human justice where you're like, it's not that you have to prove your innocence. You're just not innocent. It's because it's not so much, yes, we are punished for our sins. But even if you get to the point where like, okay, you've got no sins, great. It's not a question of, all you've gotten to is the point where like, you still do not warrant life eternal. That's why it's not the, you know, there's not like a ledger of like, there are books that are opened, at least in the book of Revelation. At the white throne, there's books that are open. And it's not just a book, but books. And these are the accounts, so to speak, the accounts of men's lives. It's not literal in my mind. It's just a symbol of like the accounts are opened. And whosoever was not found written in the book of life, so was cast in the lake of fire, which is the second death. So you don't have to have done. It's not the evil that you've done that gets you into life eternal. It may warrant greater or lesser punishment, the evil that we've done. But no good we have done will ever measure up to being worthy of entering into life eternal. Or everlasting would be better, because eternal, I think, implies eternity past and eternity future. Like something, you know, or maybe I'm wrong about that. I guess I thought that's what eternal meant. And I'm not actually sure. I've just been assuming that's what it meant for a while. At some point it got into my head that eternal implied eternity past and eternity future. So that only God is truly eternal. The thing is that the words in the Bible are not like when we have this concept of eternity, there's like everlasting or age abiding. Oh, sorry, Katie. Katie doesn't like when I yawn. I did get a solid 6 in last night, so I feel pretty good. So, you know, we have to give account for all that we do. Now, back to the thought of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. Well, the question: how can we who are evil speak good things? How is that possible? If our hearts are corrupted. I've been speaking mostly about the sinful nature of man and that the corruptible nature of man. Man can behave, I mean, we can behave better. But what Jesus always teaches is that it starts in the heart. That's why, you know, it's funny. I was listening to an atheist trying to rip apart the 10 Commandments. And it was like, there's basically 2 or 3 different ways they attack them. And one is sort of saying it's silly. Like the first few, like worshiping God and, you know, all that. Okay. and I have a study on worship that goes into that. It discusses it from that angle. It's not like just a study about how we worship, though that's in there too. And that study is I don't know why I give you. It's not that hard to find. I mean, but it is it's like a really recent one. Yeah, March 2nd. It's number 36 on the studies page. They'll make fun of the worship, then they'll talk about thou shalt not kill. Like every society has this law. I mean, it's big deal. Thou shalt not steal. Every society has it. And then they get to the commandment, thou shalt not covet. Like that's a thought crime. Blah blah blah. This is why their rationalist morality fails. Something that Jesus taught. Out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. And that's not just the mouth. Out of the abundance of the heart, the hands perform. Out of the abundance of the heart, the feet walk. The things going on in your mind are extremely important. That the last commandment about coveting, people like unbelievers. I mean, most believers are like, okay, we shouldn't covet it. But people who don't believe think, oh, we don't need to worry about what's going on in people's minds if we're going to establish morality. Not that I think that it's my business to get into someone else's head, but it's your business to get into your head and analyze what's going on in your mind. And like, you can fool the people around you, but what's going on in your heart? That's important. It's not just a question of like. That's why Jesus in the Sermon on the Mount, he starts talking about looking at a woman to lust after her. That's important. How you treat your brother. It has to do with how you think about your brother. How much you despise him in your heart. The things that go on in our hearts are extremely important. It's not just like, oh, thought crimes don't matter because they don't affect anybody. They affect you. And they affect your behavior. When people engage in poisonous thoughts and just marinate in them day after day after day, it has an effect on their actions, on their outward behaviors. And it leads to all sorts of evils. And the thing is, it makes you evil. Having all kinds of, being outwardly righteous, but having all kinds of evil going on inside makes you evil. Because what happens is then because you think, well, no one sees what's going on in my head. It doesn't matter. So then you go out into reality and you start saying, let's adjust reality a little. I don't like the way the world works in some fashion or the other. So when no one's looking, I'll change reality. Like this piece of merchandise doesn't belong to me, but no one's looking, so I'll just alter that reality and put it in my pocket and take it away. And if no one notices, then it's fine. Just like no one sees it in my mind. Well, you could say, well, that's, that has an outward effect. Yeah, it does. That's the point. It's the mental things lead to things that are outward. People who go around thinking their thoughts, what they think is a secret that never comes out and is, or like thinks that it's morally neutral for them to have all kinds of evil thoughts, to covet their neighbor's wife, to covet other things that belong to other people, or just to marinate in poisonous thinking, like resentment, maliciousness. There's all these things are all come down as things in the New Testament canon, which are they are in the Old Testament, but the New Testament does a much better job of bringing out this aspect of human malevolence. That there are things going on in their minds that cause evil to come about, and because that is the source, then that itself, that doing that, engaging in that activity, is also itself evil. Allowing yourself to be given over to thoughts which are evil thoughts. We can't punish people for thinking. It's wrong, like human beings. But what I'm saying is, God knows their thoughts, and you know your thoughts. And so if you have any interest in righteousness, rein in your thoughts. Rein in your thoughts, and then the things that come out of your mouth will also be good. Like as Jesus said in Mark, nothing going into a man defiles him. It's the things that come out of them. It probably says it somewhere in Matthew too. It's the things that come out of you that defile you. And that's a metaphor for, because think about it, the words you speak. Think, well, it's just words. The words we speak, by his word, God created the world. Or the world, says it's written. He created the world by his word, by the Logos. And therefore, it is certainly a powerful metaphor of acting out in the world. You speak the truth. You speak, you speak the, I mean, it's like, you speak the words of like in your human interactions with other people, the things you say, the ways you try to manipulate reality with your lips. Because we do manipulate the reality with our lips. It's not always a bad thing. Out of the good treasure of the heart bringeth forth good things. I like 90% of my activity as a father is manipulating the reality of our home. And I probably shouldn't use the word manipulate. I mean, I've used that and people have been like, ooh, manipulative. I'm like, I just think like, look at, here's a spoon and I manipulate it with my fingers. Manipulate, it has to do with the hands. You manipulate things. It's like, here, I'll manipulate this. Look, I'm manipulating it. But people often say, well, being manipulative, being characterized by manipulation of human beings. I don't mean to maliciously manipulate things. I mean just like I try to change the way things are. Like if the children are misbehaving, I speak words to stop them from misbehaving. They're making a lot of noise while I'm trying to work or something like that. I say, please, would you please be quiet? Or whatever I need to do. If there's an issue with my wife, I go to her and I speak words to manipulate that situation into a more favorable position. But we can also use our words for evil to manipulate situations into worse situations, to make the world around us a worse off place. We can speak words that are poisonous. We can speak words that break things down and destroy. You want to try to, with your words, build things up. That's why we have exhortation. That's why we have encouragement. I want to give you courage to do good things. I'm going to give you courage to make your world better, to lay hold on the powers of God, on the things that he has offered us as Christians that we might take hold of and become his children. That is a great form of manipulation, is to speak the words to you that will properly orient you so that you are headed in the right direction. So that's how the good man out of the good treasure of his heart brings forth good things. Evil man out of the evil treasure, he speaks things that'll make people sad. He speaks things that'll get people, the funny thing is I know how this goes on, but see how when I talked about good things, the words came like that. But well, I'm capable of evil, and I know that I can be monstrous. The truth is I haven't been living like that. You know what I mean? I've as much as possible tried to rein in the evil. I've been mindful of what goes on in my heart. And so when I speak words, I'm trying to do good things. But, there are people who, like, they come into conflict with each other. Like in a marriage. See, I don't have much experience with this in my marriage because we've consistently tried to build each other up. But sometimes, there might be a situation with couples where, like, they have a conflict. And say, instead of working to resolve it in a positive way and to try to build the relationship, they'll start tearing it down and just saying the most awful things to each other. And it becomes a contest of who can hit the other one the hardest, who can, hurt the other one deepest, because maybe you take offense and then you give offense. There's no turning the other cheek. You feel like they just said something to me that's extremely hurtful. Well, I'm going to say something back to them that is also hurtful, but more so. And then the other person gets hit like that, and they think, well, I can say, you think you can say bad things, I can say things. And you can crush people that way. Eventually, someone's going to get crushed. And then if you have any love in your heart, wouldn't you end up feeling bad anyways at crushing the person? Or you should. Either that, or now what happens with some couples, this has never happened with me. Not that we haven't had conflicts. I mean, this in particular. Because every conflict, I've always made a point, like the Apostle Paul said, don't let the sun go down on your anger. I sort it out same day. It gets sorted out. That's the rule I've imposed on my life, my entire adult existence. Because I thought that was important. I don't like unresolved issues. I don't like having things go on for days. But that's what happens. People, they start not. I've seen this in movies. They start talking to each other. They won't talk to each other, and then they kind of let it cool down, and then they kind of come back to, without really saying a lot. They sort of reconcile. But deep down, because we can't. It's hard to hold on to resentment actively. But it lays buried. If it's never been dealt with, it's not been dealt with. It's just there. It is. It's waiting. And next time, the argument is even more bitter. The recriminations are more brutal. And it tears the relationship down, and it goes down and down and down and down. I can testify that my marriage has gotten better and better and better and better. But it's not like there weren't little setbacks along the way, or arguments, or we had situations. I mean, I've hit back, so to speak. I mean that metaphorically, not literally. I mean, I've said things harsher. When I felt like offended, I would say a harsher thing. I've done that, but not mostly, and not, as you go on, you try to get better, try to build up the world, your world around you. I mean, try to build up your family members, and it's like, I use that language because it's like God made the world with his words, and we make our world with our words to a great degree. It's how we build relationships with each other. It's how we, all like even the work I do, like with work, or even just this thing. There's words on the screen, but also like there's words in the program of the computer. It's all in a language. It has all been built on words, the logos, the idea. There are all these ideas, because that's what words are. In fact, I shouldn't even, the mouth speaks the words, but the words are representations of the ideas of the heart. And they can be expressed through sign language or through all kinds of deeds. I mean, that should be understood. It's not, words are the smallest form of deed. You know what I mean? It is like the most subtle tool in the human toolbox. I can take a hammer and build a house. I can take words though, and they're just these sounds of ideas that go forth, and you can understand them somehow. It's a miraculous. It's crazy. So sometimes I have to actually be careful. I don't actually watch my mouth speak, because it starts to seem like almost a sort of little magical thing. Your tongue dancing around your mouth. It's strange, and then all the sounds of that go out, and it's weaving a tapestry of understanding that is so remarkable, but we take it for granted because we do it all the time. But it is like our most, like if I had, like I have like all kinds of screwdrivers. I got big ones, I got really big ones, but then I get down to those little micro screwdrivers. They're for very delicate jobs, and that's what your words are. They're like but those delicate jobs can make big important things, because every great endeavor, every great thing, is actually a combination of all these little things, all these details. It seems like like if I go out and build something, it doesn't matter. If I go out and build, I mean build a physical construction. Let's say I decide to just build a house. Well, the bigger the house, the more planning that has to go in. And planning is words. It is thoughts going into, okay, 15 feet by this feet. Same thing goes with all your relationships in your life, how you interact with other people. It's all built up around words. And the greater the relationship, the more word has to go into it. That's why it's important to communicate with your spouse. I say that, and I'm like, I know that a lot of females listen, and men aren't always good at communicating. I don't know how to change that for them. I've always been highly communicative, but that's I don't know. You just gotta get the right kind of communication. I hate giving family advice, honestly, because I don't know. I'm doing that how to raise your kids thing, and it's just I give it. I have there are plenty of men who listen too, and I honestly speak for them to give them advice. But I can't tell a woman how to get a man to do this. You can't get people to do things. They're not puppets. You can try to build up. You can do best by performing your role the best, and that, because that's what the Apostle Paul says. Who knows, O wife, who has an unbelieving husband, how you might win him by your chaste behavior and your godliness. You do the right thing. You perform your role correctly, even though they're not, and maybe they're not even a believer. But you do your end properly in the hopes that they will come around. Leading by example. Because a person is the most, you can see, here's the thing. And I talk about this when raising children or whatever. You can't change people very much. You can encourage people to change. You can do all kinds of things to try to change them. But they have to do it. They have to change. No one can change you without your cooperation. Without your cooperation, I can't change you. I might be able to break you, but I can't build you. You know what I mean? They could take me into the torture chamber and destroy my soul. Or not. Well, that's what God says. They can't do that. They could kill me. They can't destroy my soul. But they could try to break me down and certainly destroy my mind, right? They could do that to me. They can break your mind. Or maybe they can't. Maybe if the Lord would preserve me. But as I know that as a human being, without God's power and assistance or something like that, they could definitely destroy me. As far as my life. I could still be alive but be a shell of myself. Okay, I don't want to contradict the scriptures. And I don't mean that. When he talks about destroy the soul, I do take that a little literally. I think they can kind of metaphorically destroy your soul, but they can't literally destroy it. They can't destroy you as an existing person. According, that's what the Lord said. So, no one can change themselves. You can't change people. And I'm already 15 minutes in the second half. Let's just, you can't change people. They have to change themselves. But what you can change, I'm going to finish this thought because otherwise I'll lose it. What you can change is your relationship with them. You have a lot of power over your relationship with people. That's how I built my house. Is I took power in my relationship with my wife. I have put a lot into that, into building that up. I put a lot into it because it's important to me. I can't change her. I can't. And I'm not, there's not a lot I ever wanted to change about her. It was most of the things I wanted to change about me. I just felt like I was the faulty partner. Though she would contradict that. That's fine. That's the way we should see it. It's good. We should look on our own faults and forgive the faults of others. But you can, and same thing with your children. I can't make my children be away. As far as, you shape them early as far as their behavior in the home. That's one way you get to shape them, but you can't change them internally. There's things about them that just you cannot touch. And so how they end up in life has a lot more to do with them than you. It's their responsibility to take control of their lives, to take responsibility for their lives, and to live their lives as they become convicted that they ought to live it. But you definitely can control your relationship with them. You have, especially as a parent, you have so much control over that. And if it means anything to you, then you do something about it. You attempt to make sure you have a good relationship. And that comes from words. The words, the words, the words. Okay, let's quickly just mention this. Subscribe to Line by Line Bible Studies. That's this channel. Subscribe. Click the subscription button just below to the left of the screen, which is to my right. Right down there. And then oraclesofgod.org. That's where my Bible studies can be found, especially on the studies page. I also have a lot of music. You hear some of my music in the introduction and outroduction of the study. And then, of course, my other YouTube channel. That's all linked in the description below. If you have a question, and this is also linked in the description below. I haven't checked it this week. I checked it earlier this week, but I'll check again. See, I should even check right now, shouldn't I? I'm just going to bring it up. All right. So, anyways, go back to study mode. Okay. Oh, good. Oh, there was a study question. Sorry. Okay, I covered this one, I hope. Yes. Okay, that's one I gotta cover from before. This one's from... I'm just gonna check this. Let's see. Oh no, I did cover this one. Okay, cool. I did cover that. Okay. Okay. Let's go back. Sorry that got boring really fast. I was just trying to... I'll have to look at this later. Sorry. I'm like... The mail interface is really annoying because they keep changing... You know, why do they always change everything? I feel like they've just got teams of people whose job it is to just come up with the next version, even though the current version works perfectly fine. And so they move everything around, and so that basically now all the help documents need to be updated. It's just really annoying. It's like, I'm like, come on. I know it's great that these people, it gives programmers jobs, and I'm not against that. But sometimes I feel like there's a bit of make work going on. They're always changing everything. It's annoying. I guess that makes me sound old, which I am almost there. I definitely have the mind of an old person. Alright, so that is sufficient for those verses. Every idle word. Again, in some sense, it is true, because everything has to be accounted for. All our thoughts and the thing, especially, you know, your thoughts. Here, let me say a word on thoughts, because I don't want to give the wrong impression. Sometimes I emphasize one aspect of a subtle subject, and you can get caught up in that side of it, and it gets confusing. You got to bring back the balance. Yeah, I mean, your thoughts are significant. But it's like this. It says Jesus was tempted in every way which we were tempted. For example, when he was in the wilderness, right? He was fasting, and then afterwards, he got hungry. If you do any research on fasting, you know, when you fast for a long period of time, and don't, you know, men have fasted for a real long time. There was a man in, I thought it was Scotland or if it was Scotch or English, but it's a famous case where he fasted over a year. He was like over 300 pounds. And he fasted and didn't die. He lived off the fat. And but when people fast for long periods, I don't know what else to say about that. But there's pictures. It's documented. It's not like just some legend, some urban legend. It's a scientific fact that a man did that. Okay. He did drink water, you know. So, but what I'm saying is, like, Jesus was hungered. That means he felt the hunger. And, you know, and like I said, like, the difference between seeing a woman as an attractive thing versus lusting after her, like the line, when you've crossed the line, you kind of know, but it's not easy to describe. But it is not, it's like there are, I mean, I guess I think it's definitely a lot of those things with the thoughts. You can't, thank God for the blood of Jesus. Let's just say that. So like, so that, you know, we can try to take control of our thoughts, try to control these things, but we know we're going to be tempted. And temptation is something where you feel the temptation of something. Like something says to you, hey, why don't you take me? Why don't you look at me? Why don't you, you know, covet me? Why don't you lust after me? You know, it's like it's sending that message. It's entering into you. And sin is what you do with it. How you take that, the thought that enters in. Because it's not the thoughts that enter in that defile you. It's the ones that come out of you. And it's not just, but again, like I said, it's not just, oh, I didn't act on that. Not yet. If you continually allow poisonous thoughts to make room for them and entertain them and say, oh, come on, here, just lodge yourself here in the back of my hippocampus. You know, just stick yourself in there. Just find yourself a nice warm spot in my brain to, I'm going to store you for later use. You know, because, you know, men don't have ideas. Ideas have men, people. People don't have ideas. Ideas have people. I mean, thoughts are found. Thoughts are discovered. You know, we take in information from the outside world and we store it, and then we take those things that are stored in our mind and we twist and turn and combine, and then we discover a new thought. But this is all, but it's just the comparisons of things from the outside world. It's all coming in. Like your brain doesn't, like I said, it's like Albert Einstein didn't have the theory of relativity in his brain and he had to dig around and find it out. It was out there in the world and he discovered it. And the thought entered into his mind. That's how it works. Thoughts come in and they get stored and then they get brought out later. And we think we had a thought. What it is we have stored thoughts, stored information, and then as we move through reality, the pattern of, it's almost like an antenna that you're continually building. Like you have this antenna that's absorbing all this information and getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger as you add more thoughts to your mind. And then it's able to reach out even larger and larger and capture new thoughts and deeper thoughts and more distant, you know, things that are not accessible because you, it's how you build up your mind. And so when we take in thoughts, we need to reject them. You know, like some thoughts, they got to be rejected. I mean, you can't forget it, but your brain doesn't store everything. I mean, you know, how many times have you sinned? Can you remember all of them? You know, how many times have you lusted? Can you remember each incident? If you're a good man, relatively speaking, relatively good, meaning good compared to other men, not good compared to God, is going to try to, if he makes a mistake, he's going to do his best not to hang on to that. And I don't mean the guilt so much as just you want to remember that you were guilty of that. Okay. Nothing wrong with that. Don't be swallowed up in guilt though. You know what I mean? But like I'm saying, you don't want to think oh, I'm better than other people and forget all the things you've done. But you don't need to remember all the details. Every time I did some bad thing, I'm going to remember, stealing. If you remember all your stealing incidences, I think I stole twice, in my youth. No, actually, I got caught once. What am I thinking? I got caught once. See, I forgot all the other times I stole. And of course, when I got caught, I told my parents. It's the first time ever, But it was... yeah, see, I actually lost track of all this stuff because when I got caught and I got punished, I wanted to forget that I ever was a thief. You know what I mean? And I think even to this moment, I think I kind of thought, yeah, that was the only time. That lie has almost become my reality, at least mentally. But I remember it started in a brief period of time when I was moved to a new neighborhood. I had no friends from that neighborhood. And so I immediately, as kids will do when you move, you got to be careful because they often make friends with new people, and oftentimes it's not the best people. They're just kind of lost, and they'll take any friend that comes along, especially when you send them to school and stuff. It's I need friends. I'm lost here, and so anyone who befriends me, I'm pretty much, hey, thanks for being my friend, and they're like, hey, let's go to the convenience store, and they come out and they're holding something, and it's look what they stole it. It's you ever stole it? Oh, yeah. No, you should. Encourage you to do that. You ever tried smoking? No, smoking. That's what happens. So I want to account for those things, though. But thank God through the blood of Jesus, we have an accounting. He has reconciled us to God by his sacrifice. And so we can be reconciled to him through him. And so that, when it talks about giving account of every idle word, you're not going to be asked about everything you've said. But as a Christian, you need to be mindful that everything you say matters. You know what I mean? We do not want to be careless with our words. Just because I have the blood of Jesus on me, so I can say the most awful things to people. I'm a Christian, so I can be as big a jerk as I like. Sometimes I feel like that is how people, let's say, I've encountered who are Christians, but they have teachers who emphasize the wrong doctrines, things like serpent seed, let's just say that, and they become puffed up with pride in their knowledge because they know these secrets. And they've been taught that simple salvation is beautiful, but what you really need to know about is who the devil's children are and what the angels that sin did. You have to know all these things. And I've been getting new insight on the angels that sinned, honestly, as far as how that might be significant. So my teaching on that is probably going to expand a bit. Though I still think it's an arguable point and not an essential point. There are certainly interesting lessons that can be gleaned from it. So, however you interpret it. But I do think that actually the angel, and I'm talking about the Genesis 6. I did a thing I have a thing on this channel already that I would like to be different. And so I'll probably bring that subject up again. It'll come up. Your words justify you, your words condemn you. It doesn't mean you can get yourself off the hook by saying, I'm innocent. That's not what it means. You know what I'm saying? Your logos, the way in which you use your language, and use your words, the thoughts that proceed out of you, whether they be, I should steal this, or hey, I speak. I couldn't think of anything to say. I'm sorry, but I feel like half the study was brilliant, half of it was silence, and the other half was just bumbling over my words. But that's how it is if this was my usual edited Bible study, though not usual now, it's not usual anymore. The ones I've done for years, it would I'd edit all that garbage out. But it has not to do with like your claims of innocence or anything like that. I mean, because then you're judged by that word. You're a liar. This is talking about God. He knows what you've been going around saying and doing by your words. Were your words lies? Were your words the truth? That's how. It's not like you just say a bunch of good stuff. I'm amazing. I'm great. I always tell the truth and I never lie. I'm so just virtuous and so, and then it's not true. You're a liar. That's not, you don't justify yourself by saying stuff that isn't true. I was going to say the common, I like that word. I like the word that has to do with what comes out of animals, especially four-legged bovines. That's like if there was a better word, I would so gladly use it. And I know it's profane, but that's bull. You know? It really deserves to be said. Sometimes it's like, I don't know. The pearl clutching is a bit much for me sometimes. It's like, Paul, you shouldn't speak that way. Yeah, I know. I'm sorry. By my word, but it's like that is, I will account for that least word, and say that it was the truth. You know what I mean? Out of the mouths of babes and sucklings, even out of the mouth of an unclean beast like an ass, you know, the truth can come, like Balaam's ass. It spoke to him. You know, and so if the word of God can come out of the mouth of an ass, it can certainly come out of me. All right, so by thy words thou shalt be justified, by thy words thou shalt be condemned. And it has to do with the character, nature, and truth of what you say. So much, I feel like these couple 4 verses, was it even 4? Yeah, 34, 35, 36, 37. I could spend all week just on those, and I'd never run out of things to say. But I think we will allow that to be sufficient and move on to verse 38 next time. Oh yes, this one, that one, it's just jam-packed. Okay, how did I ever get through this book? The first time I taught this book, recorded. It's not the first time I've gone through Matthew, that's for sure. But the first time, I mean, on my website, I got recordings. I have a bunch of old cassettes of my teachings from over the years, but those are not likely to appear anywhere anytime soon. Last time I taught this, I mean, in 2010. I said this the other week, but I just think it's funny. Total time. Yeah, 26 hours and 8 minutes. We just completed hour 39. We're not even halfway through. So, I apologize if it's tedious. I hope it's interesting. It's whatever. You know, it's like, from what I hear, long form stuff is on the rise. People like it. Or some people do. Anyways, my name is Paul Strangini. Thank you for joining me in this study. I look forward to studying with you again. Tomorrow is Saturday, but I'm going to try to do something anyways. I don't count on it. Just depends on what's going on. Yeah. I'm going to try to do something, but I just don't know how it's going to go. So, all right. So, hey, by your words you shall be justified or condemned.